Hey everybody, it's Jim here, and today we're going to be doing a comparison of this core Paul Reed Smith McCarty against this Gibson Wildwood Les Paul Standard 50s. And for today's test, we're going to be using the traditional signal chain of this channel, guitar, Jackson Audio Optimist, into the Mesa Boogie Rectiverb 25, mic'd up by the SM57 straight into the Focusrite 18i8 interface. No processing whatsoever once it's inside of Pro Tools. So let's hear how they sound. Now, I've done a lot of guitar comparisons on this channel, and this is one I was looking forward to from the moment that I got the McCarty, and I have to say, after playing these guitars back to back, it's been my favorite to date. These guitars played very, very differently from each other. The necks are very different. This is a big old 50s neck, whereas this is their pattern regular on the Paul Reed Smith, but it was really easy playing them back to back because they're both such high quality instruments. Now, since I'm already holding the Les Paul, I think it makes sense to start off talking about the Gibson and what I like about it. I love playing clean on Gibson Les Paul, specifically the middle position and the neck pickup. The riff that I wrote for this kind of demo here was written on the spot on this guitar in the middle position because it brings out this really dark and kind of full nature to it that I don't get out of many other instruments that I play. Most of the instruments I play are Fenders, and those single coil instruments don't kind of give you that fullness that a proper Les Paul or like a 335 is going to give you, and I absolutely adore that about this guitar. Now, I'm not sure how well this is going to translate to YouTube, but sitting here in the room as a whole talking about the tone of this instrument, it just seemed bigger than the Paul Reed Smith McCarty did in pretty much every single position that I played it in. And the last thing I want to point out, in my own opinion and experience with Les Pauls, I feel like I'm fighting with the instrument a little bit more. It's kind of like an old Telecaster. It's not very forgiving, and I kind of appreciate and I like that because when you're in that mood and you're in that zone and you're willing to put in that extra little fight needed to get what you want out of this thing, when you pull it off, it's really hard to beat. And now onto the McCarty. This is truly a precision instrument in every sense of the term. This guitar just gets out of the way, and it's so comfortable on top of being so reliable tuning stability wise that it's a treat. Sometimes I forget I'm even playing to an extent, if that makes any sense, because it just seems so fluid. It just feels like a natural extension, something I can really rely on. When I pick up this Paul Reed Smith, I have nothing to worry about, and if I don't nail a part, it's totally on me. I have nothing else to place the blame on because this guitar just can handle anything that you can throw at it. Now, as far as the tones of this instrument go, I didn't even hit on some of the best parts of this guitar because the Gibson can't do it, and that would be the coil split. I believe the Paul Reed Smith coil splitting is the best in the business, and I don't think it's even close as far as factory equipped guitars go. Tonally, other than that, I feel like this guitar, because it has a little bit more high end to it, will cut through better in a mix. If you're having a lot more instruments involved, you'll definitely be easier mixing wise to fit this guy in than the Gibson, but I feel like a lot of older kind of classic tunes where you might not have 5 or 6 guitar tracks, maybe you only have 1 or 2 and not a whole lot of other instruments clashing, the Gibson's still going to provide that big rich nature without being overbearing, whereas this guitar is really versatile and can fit into almost any kind of musical environment. And playability wise, I already kind of alluded to this, but this guitar is a joke. It's so comfortable. It's got a really manageable lightweight to it. It's about what my Telecaster weighs. You have superior access to the upper frets if you're somebody who plays in this area of the guitar compared to the Gibson Les Paul. Same problem I had when I had the Gibson ES339. But I mean, there's not much to complain about with this guitar. I think the biggest complaint would be some people would say it doesn't sound like a Gibson. And when you go out and you buy a Paul Reed Smith guitar or you try a Paul Reed Smith guitar, if you go into it with the mentality of it doesn't sound like a Gibson, therefore it's sterile, it has no soul. I've heard all these kinds of, adjectives to describe Paul Reed Smith instruments and the way they sound. I think that's the wrong way to look at things. I mean, I wouldn't purchase a Telecaster and be pissed off when it doesn't sound like a Jaguar. It's just a totally different vibe, a totally different design going for it. And even if you wanted to make it a more accurate spec specs-wise comparison, and this was a McCarty 594 versus the Gibson Les Paul, I still think that you'd be able to tell a difference pretty clearly between the two of them. Now, I don't think it would be right to make this video without mentioning what I believe are a few cons between these two guitars. The first being, obviously, the prices of them. This is a Les Paul Standard from Wildwood, so it's about $3,000 new. These list for $4,000 new. This is not cheap. The other thing that I really don't like about the Paul Reed Smith is this finish, just like the blues, if you keep it out in the light or expose it to light, it's this beautiful purple is just going to fade and it's going to fade away. So it lives in its case. It's kind of heartbreaking because I think it's the best looking guitar I have, but I very rarely see it unless I'm actually going to be playing it. So that kind of sucks. I know, not really the end of the world when you're talking about playability and tones and stuff like that, but you know, it's kind of annoying. You want to at least look at the thing and appreciate it without worrying about the color going. This guitar, I really wish that, you know, you had a little bit better access, but this is a traditional Les Paul when it comes to the upper frets. It is what it is. Some people make it work. Hell, Randy Rhoads made it work. There's no excuses. It's just this one makes it so easy to do it, and yeah, it just makes me wanting a little bit more. Other cons are, despite this being a relatively light Les Paul Standard for a non-weight relieved model, this is 8.5 pounds. You notice the difference between the two of them, with the weight of this one being far lighter than the other one by I think about 1.5 pounds. It's one of those things where you might not be bothered by any of that. You might sit and play a 13-pound Les Paul. I was talking to Matt on the Discord earlier today, and he has an early 1991, I believe, no, is it 1989 Les Paul Studio? Thing weighs 13 pounds, and he couldn't say enough good things about it. So, I mean, your mileage may vary in that aspect. And I realize this is the part of the video where you expect me to say which guitar is better and why. I'm not going to do that because, first of all, I think it's personal taste whether you're going to agree with me or not. And secondly, I can't directly compare these two guitars. I don't think of them as direct competitors, as strange as this sound, and I know I just filmed a comparison of them, but this guitar I think of as a Swiss Army knife that can do almost anything that you're going to throw at it. And there's a lot of guitars that do have coil splitting abilities and things like that, so you can technically get a variety of sounds. But this, it's convincing and it's so easy to play, whereas the Gibson, there's a certain fun in fighting with the guitar and having that rawness and that big boomy sound that this guitar can create. So I don't feel like there is a better one of the two of them. There's just no other way for me to say it. I love them both. Thankfully, I'm in a position where I get to keep them both. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. My advice to you guys, if you were on the fence about either of these instruments, get out to a store that has both, try them both, and you might be really surprised which one you would prefer. But now I'd like to hear from you guys. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know which of these two guitars you preferred from the sound comparison. If you own either one, make your case for it if you feel so inclined to do so. But other than that, tomorrow is Thursday, so that is the weekly live stream, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We could talk more about this or anything related to gear that you guys wish to go over. Comment on the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm loving the fact that so many of you are interacting and becoming a part of this community. It makes me so happy, and I'm so gracious to all of you. And special shout out to all my members, to Matt, to Larry David, it's not his real name, to Evan, and to Ian for supporting this channel by taking the extra step to becoming a member. I love and appreciate all of you. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Take it easy, everybody.